Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Matt Anderson, Space Force Association Chief Growth Officer and VP, CACI.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a real treat with this next session. Last year at Spacepower, SFA presented Mr. Jared Isaacman with the inaugural Advancing Human Presence in the Space Domain Award. Jared is an American entrepreneur, pilot, philanthropist, and commercial astronaut. Just over 3 years ago, he commanded Inspiration 4, the first all-civilian mission to space. It was on this mission where he flew hundreds of second lieutenant rank to space and then presented them to the Air Force Academy class of 2022 that were commissioning into the Space Force, ensuring that the first rank they wore in the Space Force had already been flown in space. Inspiration 4 also raised $250 million for St. Jude to help fight childhood cancer. And my favorite was when, upon splashdown, Elon Musk tweeted, "Put me down for 50 million." 3 months ago, Jared commanded Polaris Dawn, the first in a series of 3 space missions where he conducted the first commercial spacewalk, as you saw in the video, and traveled the furthest from Earth that any human has gone since the final Apollo voyage to the moon in 1972. 1 week ago today, President-elect Trump nominated Jared to be our country's next NASA administrator. Personally, I think Jared epitomizes the weapons officer motto of being humble, approachable, and credible. Please stand and give a warm welcome to a great American and a huge friend of SFA, Mr. Jared Isaacman. Jared, first of all, congratulations on the nomination. We'll have that talk later when all the confirmation process is over. Today we're just excited to talk about the human spaceflight and why we're talking about human spaceflight at a SFA conference where we're focused on space superiority, the military side of space. This conference is unique to that, but I think that it's also good to rewind back for those who may not know where SFA and yourself and your team started the journey almost 4 years ago. It was during a Super Bowl halftime commercial when you made a very unique announcement. People didn't even know what they were watching, but announced the Inspiration 4 mission. And then you and I sat on stage in front of hundreds of cadets at the Air Force Academy and talked to them about a whole myriad of topics. But can you rewind back a little bit to right at that moment, almost 4 years ago, when you said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a Super Bowl commercial, and we'll just kind of talk through that, and then how even with the relationship with the Space Force and the Air Force Academy that's contributed to your training. So can you take us through just Inspiration 4 first?
Oh, sure. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here and speak with all of you today. Sure, kind of rewinding the clock a little bit. I mean, I've been an aviation and space enthusiast since kindergarten. And I thought, becoming an astronaut, better chance of getting struck by lightning. So I had this parallel career in aviation, flew this world record flight in 2008. It was a really great challenge, but it was also to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, actually. And coming back from that trip, I was invited to go to Baikonur in Kazakhstan and see a Soyuz launch with some of the early commercial space leaders, before commercial space was even really a thing. And that's when I thought, man, maybe it's possible. Maybe there is a world where actually you could have an opportunity to go and journey in this new frontier. It was sometime later, I guess about 12 years after that trip, when the opportunity came and to create Inspiration 4. Now, I had no idea that I was going to have the opportunity to lead the first commercial mission to space. And when I did, that came with a lot of responsibility. You have to get this right. Space has been a very divided topic going back to the space race. Why are we sending people to the moon when we have so many problems here at home? It wasn't hard to predict that would be even, that those feelings would have even more energy behind them in more modern times, especially in the midst of a pandemic. That's why we tried to put a lot of thought into assembling a very inspiring crew, people I didn't even know. Childhood cancer survivor, grew up to only dream in life, nothing to do with spaces. I just want to live, and I want to grow up, and I want to be able to work at St. Jude and help other kids in the fight that I went through. That became Haley Arsenault, who is our She was our medical officer and mission specialist on Inspiration 4. We did have a Super Bowl commercial. We wanted to energize a lot of people, get people excited about commercial space and solving some real problems here on Earth by raising funds for St. Jude. That's what that Super Bowl commercial was about. And actually, it went to an airman. Chris Dombrowski started his journey actually as a space camp counselor, but served in the Air Force working on ICBMs, and ultimately wound up getting to ride a really cool rocket as a mission specialist on Inspiration 4. And all he did was make a donation to St. Jude after seeing that commercial. And next thing you know, he was in space. And then also Dr. Sian Proctor, she was a runner-up in 2009, I believe, in the NASA selection criteria. She literally did everything you could do in life to be selected as an astronaut. I mean, she's a PhD geoscientist. She's an analog astronaut, scuba diver. She served in the Civil Air Patrol. She really went, and she got really close, but she didn't give up. And then she ultimately became the first black female pilot of a spacecraft on Inspiration 4. So, and along that journey, was shortly after it was announced, we went to the Air Force Academy, which that started a fantastic relationship from just getting a chance to speak and interact with the cadets who, every one of them was far more knowledgeable about spaceflight than I could ever be. I just wanted softball questions from the crowd, But then we were able to fly, a bunch of the second lieutenant rank up into space, which was great. And then we got to go back with Polaris Dawn and do the AM490 program, which as part of my last mission, which is their free fall skydiving program. So it's been an awesome relationship with the Air Force Academy and with the Space Force.
Well, I know Hippie Wolf and I appreciated attending the Inspiration 4 launch, and hearing about a billionaire that dropped out of high school at the age of 16 really motivated Hippie, because to start SFA he's like, if he can do it, I can do it. But some of those guardians that you gave them rank that went into space, I know they've kept in touch with you. Can you tell a little bit about that relationship?
It's so cool. I get messages quite a bit from a lot of the folks that we met 4 years ago, and it's great to hear where their journeys have gone. Even actually our skydiving instructors at the Academy from the AIM-490 program, they're off at medical school now or pilot training, which is great. But one cadet at the time who might even be here reached out to me, and because he joined the Space Force, and he asked if I could fly his rank again, except his captain bars, which I was like, this must be done, because I realized his last name was Kirk. I was like, Captain Kirk's rank is definitely going to space with us. So actually, I filmed it on Polaris Dawn and sent him a copy of the video, and he probably we finally just got our payload back, so he probably just got the rank back recently. So
awesome. Well, a year ago we were here in Orlando at the inaugural Spacepower conference, and we had Major General Purdy on stage with us, and he wanted to play the Marvel What If game. And a lot of people in this room, we're all space dorks, and we all secretly want to go to space, and so does General Purdy. But we just played the what if. One day, you defend a domain in the maritime, the air, the ground. It's no different in space. We've been hearing it all week. And as we went through that Air Force Academy, and you went through your jump training, and some of them were going Space Force, some of them were going Air Force. What part of, we've been talking a lot about readiness and getting the training going. What did you think about when you said, hey, we're going to go to Inspiration 4, we'll get to Polaris Dawn here in a second. What about the training that was so important for you and for commercial astronauts to go through that's important? Because you talked about some of the challenges while you guys were up there on Polaris Dawn.
Sure. Both my missions, you spend an awful lot of time in the classroom. There's a lot of academics. A lot of systems knowledge, no different than how you'd be looking at a new aircraft to fly the first time. You need to understand how it all works. And then you spend an awful lot of time in the simulator, and you build up from just these are the basics, this is how everything should normally work, then we'll throw some contingencies, emergencies, then you get to, usually your graduation exercise is some sort of Apollo 13-like moment, and then you come back right before you go to space to, this is how it should look when everything's normal. But there's so much more to it. than that. You have to get outside the classroom in the simulator, and you need, first you need high consequence training, dynamic environment under G, where if you make mistakes, there's a real price to pay for it. Now, we fly a lot of jets that can do that, but which is what we did a lot of inspiration for, and Polaris, but we obviously supplemented with Polaris Dawn by going through the Academy's AIM 490 program, which was fantastic for the crew. I mean, some of the best training. But we also go into the mountains usually. When you arrive in space, everybody feels different. This is the thing. Space has carried a hero image for a long time, and it's like, why take away from that? But that's not really preparing people for the world we're going into, which is you feel very differently. The best case scenario is you feel like you're hanging upside down from your bed for about 3 days. 3 to 4 days, then you start to adjust to it. That's the best case scenario. 50 to 60% are going to feel really bad. Talk about like kind of the worst motion sickness you may have ever had. And there's really no correlation to motion sickness on Earth or seasickness. You could be a hardcore aerobatic pilot, and nothing makes you upset here on Earth, and you could be really bad in space, or you could be like Kid Poteet on my last mission. Always gets you never want to put him on an amusement ride, right? And I couldn't read a book in the back of a car without getting sick, and he was rock solid in space. But anyway, this is the reality. These are the odds. At least 50% are going to feel really bad. But you don't have the time to just, sit there and adjust. You go to the space station, you've got, 6 months to work through it. But when you're on a free flyer mission in Dragon, you've got, 3 days my first mission, 5 days my second mission with no, real margin after that. You got to get to work. And that's why we go out in the mountains, and we get ourselves in really uncomfortable situations. And then you get comfortable being uncomfortable because you got a coin flip shot when you get in space that you're not going to be feeling great. And that's how it was on both my missions. 2 crew members on the first one, 2 on the second. And a lot of that extra training. I'll tell you, I mean, like even when we were at the Academy both times and did the 10-meter jump, like that's great. That was great for the crew to help push past fears and feeling not so great about the moment and taking a leap because you just got to get stuff done. And that was very applicable on both my missions.
High consequence training, getting used to getting comfortable being uncomfortable. I can see the parallels here as we talk about the training that the Guardians are going through right now. It's a huge focus on the Force as we look at this great power competition. Sounds like Kid Poteet was a little bit of the weak link on this. It's shocking that the Thunderbird pilot is the one that was having all the problems.
No, he wasn't. That's what I was saying. It's the exact opposite. Yes, it's interesting. Like a Thunderbird pilot is a fantastic aerobatic pilot. He does get motion sickness on rides or in cars, on boats, and he was rock solid, in space. So again, it's something. This is where a lot of science and research is being applied right now, because a lot of this is attributed to the fluid shifts in your body, increased intracranial pressure. There's a lot of vision-related issues. That's probably your second most common issue, spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome. And why does all this matter? Because if we are going to be sending a lot of people, maybe even Guardians in the future, where they're going to the moon or Mars, you want them to be able to see reasonably well when they get there, especially if they're going to have to land their ship. And you'd also like it, especially if you see a world in commercial space where 50 or 100 people are on a spaceship together, and if you know 50% are going to feel really bad, well, the other 50%, while they're watching the other get sick, are probably not going to feel great either, right? So, all good reasons why we should be putting a lot of good science and research behind conquering, some of these kind of physiological issues that happen in space.
Awesome. We have a lot of great industry partners that sponsor this event, and they're government contractors, 99% of them. And you have a lot of experience with being a government contractor. Can you tell the crowd a little bit about the vision that happened there with the adversary air company that you started? And then we'll draw some parallels to the space domain.
Sure. So it was in 2011. I was on a air show team. It was a 7-ship formation aerobatic team. We've had 5 Czech L-39s and 2 MiG-17s. I was so lucky. We had some of the best pilots in the world. ex-Thunderbirds on the team, a very famous legend in naval aviation, Dale Snodgrass. Anyway, it was really some of the best times of my life doing it. And it was also, it was during sequestration, so the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels weren't flying a whole lot, which meant we were in huge demand. Not a good thing. Thunderbirds and Blues should always be flying, but anyway, we just had the time of our lives, but we also said, we need to pivot this into something more commercial, because in the long run, doing a lot of loops and rolls to music right off the deck isn't, there's going to be a bad day. So we formed a commercial adversary company. We basically went around the world, bought over 100 fighter jets. It was super awesome, and we basically became professional bad guys for the Air Force and the Marine Corps were our primary customers. There was another company that did a great job for the Navy, and we just bought a lot of, our criteria was like we needed quantity. We weren't gonna, you can't, scratch the itch here. There's a lot of demand. You gotta put up big numbers. And they needed to be credible, so couldn't just be metal in the sky. We needed radars, we needed decent sensors on it, and then sustainable. We're going to have to fly these a lot, and they can't be, they couldn't have exceeded their fatigue life limits or whatnot. And the whole idea behind the business model really was it just saved the taxpayers money, and it gave the customer what they wanted. They could focus more on their blue air training, didn't have to waste flight hours, or airframe life. Playing the role of the bad guy. We could take that on, and you were getting 5 A4s or Mirages for the price of in the F-16 per hour. So it saved every hour we were flying. It was saving an awful lot of money and providing good training. But that running that company for about 10 years definitely gave me insights I didn't have elsewhere in my business career. Shockingly, the government does do business very differently than the rest of the country. So I got an education in that, and certainly a lot of exposure to how other, defense contractors operate.
Yeah, I think it's important. You saw a problem the government needed to have solved, and we used commercial in a very unique way that hadn't been done before to solve that problem. For the government contractors out here today, what is your one piece of advice?
I think that, look, if there is a real problem, and you know that if you solve that problem, there's going to be demand for it. Just lean in and do it. And I know, look, it's very hard sometimes, especially I run a public company too, and I get it. You're deploying financial resources. You need to have reasonably high confidence in a return. But it's like I hate the idea of waiting around and not touching the keyboard until you get a contract. It just doesn't seem like the right way to do it. It's not how we did it at Drock, and our whole thing was we robbed it right from Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. We saw a problem. We felt like if we do this right, there's going to be a fair amount of demand. And we made the investments at the right time in order to ultimately meet that demand. I'd love to see more of that in general from a defense contractor perspective, is putting a lot of, identifying the good problem, getting ahead of it, putting real resources to work, and then, build the best product service at the right price. There should be an awful lot of demand for it. So.
Awesome. One of the problems that we as a nation have really started to solve is the price of launch to space. It's really been the game changer for everything we've been talking about this week. We have a lot of launch companies here this week and that are listening right now. And whether you're working with one company or another company, I think we all remember a pretty cool launch that happened recently that in history we will look back. There will be national security benefits to it. There's commercial space benefits to it. So let's roll the video and watch this before we start our next session.
Attention all flight crew members, this is the final go-no-go poll for operations. Raptor 1.
Raptor, go.
Raptor 2.
Go.
Stage 1.
Go.
Stage 2.
Go.
Flight directors go for launch. We have liftoff.
Vehicles pitching downrange.
On OEM 0, 30 seconds till catch decision.
Confirm 30 seconds to make that decision.
10 seconds till catch decision.
Hot stage separation confirmed.
Flight directors go for booster return. Operator go vote is set true. We are go for catch.
Booster coming in hot for booster catch.
Booster MTS is saved.
And a nice 13 of those Raptor engines, and this view is incredible right now. I can't wait for us to hear the sonic boom.
Booster landing burn startup.
We can see those chops that this is absolutely insane. Our first ever attempt, we have successfully caught the super heavy booster.
Villa has caught the booster.
Chip avionics power plug nominal.
Starship has entered the atmosphere. Starship is approaching the peak heating phase of entry.
Landing bridge startup.
Starship is on target. Starship has landed.
All right, we all saw Flight 6 after that. If that doesn't fire you up, then I don't know what. Yeah, go ahead. So Polaris is a 3-series mission. You're gonna have 3 of them. You just completed the first a couple months ago. Tell us where you see Polaris Dawn or Polaris 2 and 3 going, the potential, and when you watch that video, what do you see?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic example, just to kind of play off your last question of, an organization deploying a lot of their own resources to solve big problems that are good for really all of humankind, but especially, I think, the competitiveness of our nation. And they know if they do that, there'll be demand. They're not alone in this endeavor. I mean, they absolutely put together, a hell of a video, but hopefully we're going to see another one with New Glenn launch. I think it could be, this month as well. I love all about commercial space industry right now. Just to point out, they are all generally doing the same thing, which is putting a lot of their own dollars on the line because they believe in the future that it holds. There's so much uncertainty around it too, right? Like there will almost assuredly be some space economy that's up there, and then we're going to need a lot of people in this room to protect it when it fully develops. But yeah, I mean, Blue Origin's putting a ton of their own money that's on the line. Love everything that Rocket Lab did is like another small scrappy startup that's doing great things, and for sure SpaceX and their approach of like fully reusable first and second stage, pretty awesome stuff. I mean, this is going to allow us to experiment in really, really grand ways. I mean, when you talk about the cost to accelerate mass to orbit coming down to such an extent, like we can really figure things out and take risks. I think people in this room probably, have certainly evolved by now to know, like, we don't necessarily, if the launch doesn't cost, $500 million, we don't need to spend many, many years and lots of billions to get it, right with some, super exquisite asset when we could get into a rhythm of, using all of these providers to get things up very quickly and see what works and what doesn't, and then evolve into something else. So, I mean, obviously, commercial space and reusability and the capability we just saw on the screen is awesome in so many respects. Defense being a certainly important category in that list. The future of the Polaris program is a little bit a question mark at the moment. It may wind up on hold for a little bit. We'll have to see. But overall, I'm just like super passionate about humankind's future among the stars and what's approaching, because it's going to arrive a lot quicker than probably many of us think.
We've been talking a lot about great power competition with China this week, naturally at a Space Force Association conference. Great power competition, great powers compete in more than just the military, if you think of the DIME acronym or something like that. Great power competition, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, my top agenda, what I'm incredibly passionate about is the competitiveness of our nation. We started leading in this new domain. We have to continue to do so. There is a lot that we stand to learn out there. And like I said, we're about to enter an era of great experimentation. The analogy I love to use all the time, in the 1980s, the cell phones were so damn big you had to integrate them into your car. And for the benefit of the few, a handful of Wall Street traders that needed, incredible connectivity or whatnot, very expensive. Like no one could have ever predicted at that point in time that some of the most valuable companies in the world would be software applications that live on that phone that you can now fit in your pocket and allow you to order food to your house at any time of day or connect with your friends that you haven't seen in a long time. I mean, you think about that. Like right now, reusability is going to open up this domain in such a new way that we have no idea what the future may hold, but I know we can't be second in that. Like whether, it's developments in biotechnology, like 3D printing organs or manufacturing or, who knows what we might find that could have shift the entire balance of power here on Earth. If you do potentially crack the code on, fusion power generation perhaps. But for all these reasons, not to mention just our own natural curiosity to get out there and national prestige, we are going to inevitably have a presence, on the moon and then on Mars, and we're just going to keep making the high ground higher, and that is going to necessitate really the contributions and really the protection from everybody in this room and those that aren't here. I think it's imperative that we are first in that regard and that we lead the way.
Yeah, talk about that protection a little bit. Both times when you came down from space, you talked to me about, hey, thank the Guardians. Tell me what you mean when you say that.
Look, I think as a lot of people in this room know that, first of all, our ability to, maintain situational awareness up there, it depends on satellites that people in this room take awfully good care of, as well as, feels like near infinite debris that's up there that's traveling at orbital velocities that will shred a spaceship or a spacesuit if you step outside that spaceship. And I'd say that problem was even more of a factor on Polaris Dawn as we basically were maintaining an orbit of 190 by, at peak, 1,408 kilometers. That took us through just immense amounts of satellite constellations, active, inactive, debris. I think it was the single highest risk of the mission was taking MMOD hits that would degrade our thermal protection system. So I have an immense amount of respect for the Guardians for keeping us out of that harm's way that was up there, but also all of the assets that allowed us to even be able to conduct a mission like that and come back safely. So very grateful.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Many people in the room follow you on X, and a lot of them a week ago when you sent out, a humble acknowledgement of the nomination. A lot of people in the room locked in on different parts of the message that you sent out, and one of them was the mining. And so I've had some folks in here that are in industry and they're looking at those types of things. Tell me why did you include that in the tweet?
Well, I think the idea again that there will be inevitably some sort of a space economy. I think it goes kind of back to that cell phone analogy, but the cost to access orbit coming down to such an extent, and so many players that are highly committed to seeing it through. Again, SpaceX is great, but we're going to see a hell of a launch very soon out of Blue Origin and others. We are going to crack the code on something other than what we've been doing for a while, because essentially the space economy has been more or less the same for 60 years. We have like a communication telco asset, element to it. We have, observation capabilities, of which great to see also that commercial space is making immense progress in that regard for, I think, the benefit of the warfighter and the taxpayer. But like, one of these things is going to develop, or multiple, just simply because it'll be affordable enough to experiment. So, is mining potentially on the table? I have no doubt that, private industry through PE funding or VC is going to get the dollars and cents to go out and experiment on that. And it will be, it will be affordable enough to do it because there will be several launch providers you can talk to be able to, attempt it. So, again, I think it just comes back to like the space economy as a whole. We don't know which one of these things it could be, or something that we're not even imagining yet, but it will be something, and that will only increase, the responsibility of everyone in this room.
One of the discussions we had last night was the trust that Guardians need to have in each other, in the technology that the industry here gives to them. Can you talk about the trust that you had in technology and with your crewmates on Polaris Dawn when you're about to open that hatch?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think we got a really close-up view of it for 2.5 years. It was a developmental program, so we spent hundreds of hours pressurized in various iterations of the suits that we ultimately, qualified for flight and wore. But you're riding a spaceship that had gone to space previously and had to be refurbed to go again. It was my inspiration for it was its previous flight, so I knew I didn't leave it in totally bad shape. You've got a thermal protection system that has to work, parachutes that have to work, but where that confidence comes from is you see thousands of our nation's, some of our brightest folks working on an incredible vision for opening up this last great frontier. So, and you get proof points every single day when people show up to work, and again you see that across the industry. I think for us, the ultimate of ultimate confidence with respect to the EVA itself was taking our suits to NASA's Johnson Space Center, to their Chamber B, their thermal vac chamber there, which was pretty cool, I have to say, going into this, knowing that you're going to suck the atmosphere out of the room and be surrounded by death. But better here than if something's not going to work than in space. There was a plaque on the chamber that said declared National Historic Landmark in 1984. I was like, man, 40 years ago they thought this was pretty historic and worth protecting. But anyway, it worked just fine, just the same. And I think that was very confidence inspiring. It got us familiar with what that environment would feel like, temperatures, pressure changes, and gave us the confidence to open the hatch and go outside and on Polaris Dawn.
When we were at the Air Force Academy, and I still think they have to memorize set high but achievable goals. You guys set some goals for Polaris Dawn that really drove industry to meet the customer, which was you. Can you talk about some of those goals, what you accomplished, what you learned, what you'll do differently next time, the typical debrief mentality that you have and that this team has as they train and we look towards 2027 when China has said, hey, be ready?
Yeah, I think the idea around the Polaris program, coming back from Inspiration 4, was we have the best spaceship in the world right now, in Dragon. This is what American astronauts go to the space station in, routinely, every 6 months or so. But we're about to have this light switch-like moment when Starship comes online, and you've got 2 factories making Starships. I mean, really, in terms of opening up space for everyone. My first mission to space in September of 21, we set a record, 14 people in orbit at one time. That included the Chinese were up there too. And then this past mission, new record, 19 people in orbit at one time. At least the numbers are moving in the right direction, but they're not very big numbers, right? Well, what happens when industry starts cranking out spaceships out of multiple factories? And again, it's SpaceX has a great vision for this, but so does Blue Origin. You got Rocket Lab building a brand new behemoth rocket. You're going to have lots and lots of people in space at one time. And that's why I call it this light switch-like moment where a lot of things are going to change, whether it's point-to-point travel here on Earth, to and from the moon, or any of those other possibilities we talked about from a space economy perspective. Well, the idea was use Polaris to bridge that gap. Let's do things we haven't done in a while. And in a lot of ways, it was reminiscent of the 1960s. I don't think that our spacewalk by any standard was that grand. It was a simple one, similar again to some of the first ones in the 1960s. And yeah, we went to a very high apogee at 1,400 kilometers. So what? We did that, in the 1960s too. Sure, but NASA also had 4.5% of U.S. GDP as the budget. We can do some pretty awesome things when you can write that big of a check. We can go to the moon and we can bring people back safely. That's pretty awesome. But we're going into a new era now where some of this funding can come privately through commercial endeavors, but still for the benefit of everyone. And that was what we were trying to do on Polaris Dawn. Let's get outside of our comfort zone. Let's go really high. It is a very unwelcoming environment up there. Very high radiation at the inner portion of the Van Allen radiation belt. So we certainly got a lot of data on that. You've got a lot of MMOD or micrometeoroid orbital debris in that environment that can be very threatening to the spaceship and especially in EVA. We need new spacesuits. If we're going to have lots of people on the moon or Mars someday, we need kind of a mass-producible suit that people can wear. We're going to need a pre-breathe protocol that allows people to get outside rather quickly so you can start discovering or building or repairing or whatnot. And we're going to need new communication methods, like leveraging the Starlink laser links to communicate so we can relieve the burden on some of the existing infrastructure. So all these things, very reminiscent of the past, but privately funded, commercially funded, not overly grand endeavors, but important learning that we can build upon and apply to the next mission, so that when that light switch is thrown, and we've got all sorts of commercial spaceships flying around, and our world has changed a lot, we're a little bit more prepared for it. And that was the purpose of the Polaris program.
They often say that defense interests follow economic interests. And so this is a very unique crowd than you normally speak in front of. Why is it important for us to talk about human spaceflight at this conference?
Well, I think it is absolutely inevitable for all the reasons we said before. There are reasons for humans to be on the moon and to get to Mars. Some of it is whether it's satisfying curiosity. We're out there trying to find the answers to questions we've been thinking about for a really long time. Is it economic in nature? We've uncovered something that is so vital to our interests that we must be there first in order to prevent somebody else from getting ahead. And again, potentially shifting the balance of power. And a lot of these things are they're not going to be pure robotic or probes that are going to do it. They're going to be humans that are out there doing it. They're going to be Americans. If Americans are in low Earth orbit, there's going to need to be people watching out for them for all the reasons we described before. The assets that we use for situational awareness, for the protection, for the very harsh environment that we are in. But we're going to go to the moon, and that means we're going to need guardians that are there looking out for us. And the same when we're 6-9 months away out on Mars, and then progress on from beyond that. So I think it's inevitable that this is this trajectory that humankind is going to follow. America is going to lead it, and we're going to need guardians there on the high ground looking out for us.
I see a lot of smiles in the audience right now. Yeah. There are a lot of entrepreneurs in the room that are bringing ideas to the Space Force here at this conference. And I joked about it earlier, but a 16-year-old Jared Isaacman thinks that raising his hand to go to the bathroom was stupid in high school. So he dropped out, went into his basement, started coding, and then said, I need to have some better hobbies, so he took up flying. Can you talk to the entrepreneurs out here and talk a little bit about your mindset early on, the struggles you went through, Shift 4 the way it is today. So if you're curious about Shift 4, hit Shift and the number 4 on your keyboard and take a look at what that equates to. But Jared, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I should point out, I did drop out of high school. I did get my GED, and I wound up getting my college degree later at Emory-Riddle, so just don't think I'm, I do.
Which you're speaking at the commencement ceremony.
Tomorrow. Yeah, it's and just so I do believe in the proven path of higher education. It just took me a little longer to find the road. And interestingly enough, the reason I got my degree at 29, I actually had a passion for aviation my whole life, and had been flying for years. At that point, I was flying air shows, and it wasn't until I met some of my teammates on the team who came out of the military, and I even knew that there was a world where you could fly part-time in the military, the Air National Guard, the reserves, and needed a college degree, and that was exactly what motivated me to go back and get my degree. Ultimately, by the time I was done, I was a little past the age waiver point, so, not serving was a lifelong regret, and hopefully I have an opportunity to make up for that. But anyway, so I did get my degree. In terms of the entrepreneurs in the room, well, one, if you're in the room, you're probably thinking something in the world of space. What an awesome world to start a company in. Look, I've generally found that for people and companies to be successful, I mean, you need to be solving a pretty big problem or finding a better solution to an existing problem, and then you have to be incredibly passionate behind it. I don't know too many successful entrepreneurs that generally disliked what they were working on. I say all this because space is pretty damn likable. I mean, who doesn't enjoy looking up and at the stars and imagining what's possible? So I'd say you're starting from a good place, and also you've got a lot of supportive people now that are believers, right? Like, we've seen enough, I think, visual proof points in the last couple of years that there's something going to happen here. Again, with Blue Origin and their investments, SpaceX, Rocket Lab, and others, that there is a commercial future here in space. There will be some space economy, and they are there to help fund some of those solutions to big problems or the improvements to existing solutions that are out there. But I'd say it definitely starts there. So then you need to make sure you have a business plan that supports it. So a lot of people have come up with solutions to problems that can never take in more revenue than their expense, and the business fails. So, good solution to a big problem that people are willing to pay for, that there will in fact be demand behind, and then hopefully find a bunch of other people, maybe some of the smart folks in this room, to literally try and shred your idea to pieces. Better now to find its flaws in it than after you raise capital and start hiring people and people's lives start to change, and you tend to be responsible for those lives. And then if you make it past all those steps, then just make it your number one priority in life. I mean, really, I've seen a lot of businesses fail because people make some mistakes that just sound good, which is like, family will always come first, then my business. And it's like, the best thing you can do for your family is not screw up your business in the first couple of years. You're taking one of the biggest risks you'll take in life by going down this path. Give it every second of your time and get past that kind of new business survival period that's very challenging. And if you do that, you found a solution to a very big problem. It's going to be financially viable because you have a good business plan that supports it, which means there should be some good demand for this solution. You've tested it out with some really smart people before you ever hired your first person, and then you gave it everything you got, and you got past that new business survival period, then you got something there. And that's also how you do right by your family and make them your top priority next. So.
Thanks for that. Last question. There was a lot of mentoring going on at the hotel bar last night.
Oh, yeah?
It was packed. These conferences are known for people finding their next job, meeting with their boss, maybe having an opportunity to talk about what might be next in their life. One of the questions that we got at the Air Force Academy that everybody really paid attention to is, when you look at military members that are going to the civilian life, everybody leaves the military at some point. What do you value in a military resume now that you know what you know?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I would always prioritize, veteran hiring, and I have in any of the organizations. I mean, it was very easy at Draken because we were an outsourced version of what the military normally did. So you got to take people that were immensely qualified in it. But there are things that we, struggled to teach. In a typical business. A lot of what in my day job, our shift four way philosophies around, radical ownership and being procedurally driven and executing with urgency. Having a culture of briefings and readiness reviews and debriefs, not because it adds, bureaucracy and delays to it, but it helps you get to the right outcome faster, because you make less mistakes, and when you do make mistakes, you learn from them. And when you get things right, and that's always the hard one, is like how to make it even better, right? Those are things that take a very long time to, those type of philosophies around just good execution take a long time to teach people. Whereas your veterans come out and absolutely get it day one, and just such an immense amount of pride in the work for the right outcome. So I can't imagine, I know for sure I'm not alone. I think every enterprise that's out there, would be lining up to kind of get our nation's brightest coming out of the military.
Round of applause for that. Well, Jared, on behalf of the entire Space Force Association and Bill Hippie Wolf, just want to thank you again for making this a priority during a time that you got a busy schedule. So coming to Spacepower, we look forward to hearing from you again next year, and Semper Supra.
Thank you very much, Robert.